there's a lot of power in words, as we've said in previous videos. We're trying to connect the dots here. Um, we try to do as much visual because it is important. I know it's very hard to make note if you don't see things visually, so I'll do my best to try to keep as much of the board going with with visual information here. But anyways, we're going to go to the top here. We were dealing with the word hallucinate earlier, and of course, you have to understand that part of the world of the direction of the world nations right now are deceived through what the Bible said, pharmakia or sorcery. But we go to the top. The drug comes from the word drudge, and most people, if they admit when they're at their jobs trying to pay their legal expenses in the legal world, they feel very much that they're on a never-ending treadmill. Like they'll just eventually exhaust themselves to death. And we know that most of the profit in the world occurs through the labor of most of what we call the commoners, that are represented, at least in Canada, under the House of Commons, which meant House of Prostitutes. Commoners were prostitutes who sold their bodies for money. So therefore, the word drudge comes from, or drug comes from the word drudge. Hallucinate is very easily something that you will experience, especially if you get involved in taking prescriptions of these pharmakia. We know we wrote these, I wrote it in Latin, I also wrote this in Greek so you could understand. If you're translating this out of the King James Bible, you'll see that's what it was taken from. And then you go down, it leads to the word sorcery, which is what they translated in English from that Greek word out of the transcript. And then sorcery, of course, is defined as black magic. Now, you'll notice that most of the law books are called Black's Law, not for just a random name they could have chose. People may think that, but these are all codes that were used with these surnames to represent what they were going to preach or teach to the world or the public. So when we're talking about black magic, of course, that happens in legal because they're casting black spells over you. We already talked about the statement of birth in the past. And if you look at the version that is in most of the provinces, at least in Canada, they will actually, in the birth registration, place the surname above or overhead of the given name, the truthful name. And therefore, they place a spell over your head, a very dark spell. And then, of course, you'll receive lots of mail. I'll call that blackmail because most of the mail will come in for your bills that will make you ill, for getting short for God's will, deciding to go into some adulterous legal contract with the state instead of maintaining your covenant with God. And therefore, now being a member of the public, you're going to be surrounded by these spells, these charms, which will bring harm, also has arms in it. These are not by chance. These things are predetermined in these words to be cast upon you. And that's why the magistrates that run the courts, which run the place that will handle all the basically people under this hallucination that they think they own legal title. And therefore, I'm going to read you out of a book called The Theory of Money. And I had mentioned in a previous video, it's The Theory of Money and Credit, and it was originally written in the early 1900s and then eventually translated by the 1970s out of German into English. So I'm reading out of the translated version into English under the title Social Consequences of Variations. You'll notice that the word variances is something, or a variance is mentioned in the book of Galatians, where Paul talks about the works of the flesh, and that is one of them that's in there. We know that God's immutable. His laws are always the same. Man's laws can change and go in and out and be repealed and added to. That's not how truth works. So we're going to read out of a paragraph here that goes into an explanation of how the fiction works even in the court. It says, in law, the objective exchange value of money is stable. It's sometimes asserted that legal systems adopt the fiction of the stability of the exchange value of money but this is not true. In setting up a fiction, the law requires us to take an actual situation and imagine it to be different from what it really is, either by thinking of non-existent elements as added to it, or by thinking of existing elements as removed from it, so as to permit the application of legal maxims which refer only to the situation as thus transformed. Its purpose in doing this is to make it possible to decide cases according to analogy when a direct ruling does not apply. The whole nature of legal fictions is determined by this purpose, and they are sustained only so far as it requires. The legislator and the judge always remain aware that the fictitious situation does not correspond to reality. I think that's enough for this video.